Hey guys, Aaron here from Finctum Languages, and today I want to share a little bit with you about my experience failing to learn Greek and why I failed and what you can do to avoid making the same mistakes that I did. And my my journey trying to start learning Greek, specifically ancient Greek, started probably almost 15 years ago, maybe 13 years ago, when I was in high school. And I had some experience learning Spanish in school, so that had sort of sparked an interest in language learning. And I thought, hey, here's this ancient language that has affected almost all the other languages, at least in Europe, and it has a lot of impact on our scientific terms and our political terms, and lots of prefixes and suffixes come from Greek, and that'll be really interesting. So I started learning Greek, and of course, the first thing I wanted to learn was the alphabet. And I said, well, you have to start with the basics, right? This is probably a pretty common thing to think. I'm going to start with the basics. I'm going to learn all of the letters, and I'm not going to learn anything else until I've mastered the letters. So I bought this Greek primer, this grammar that teaches you all the basics, all of the grammar. And of course, the first chapter is the alphabet, right? Alpha, beta, gamma. And it starts you off with a history of the ancient types of ancient Greek languages, and then it goes through Greek marks and the different accents that they have, akut, grave, circumflex, breathing marks, and it goes through all this different stuff, and then it teaches you about diphthongs next, and then it shows you some charts here for the different types of sounds in the Greek language. There's sibilants, liquids, stops, so I'm learning lots of linguistic stuff. And then it starts going into the types of accent marks that they have, and the types of syllables, antepenult, penult, ultima, and then here's all the different a chart for the accent marks that they have based on what syllable the accent mark falls into. And then it goes into the alphabet and all of the letters in the Greek alphabet. And then you have to memorize all of that stuff before you get to the second chapter. Problem is, that's a lot of information, and none of it is interesting. And you can see here, I actually started doing some of the exercises. And I did the exercises on up to page 13, but not on 14 or 15. I gave up real quick, because when you're just learning the alphabet and the rules about the accent marks and syllables, that's not interesting. It did not hold my interest. I wasn't learning any actual Greek. Of course, that stuff is important. You'll want to learn it down the line. But that's just a lot of crap to memorize. And I gave up. Okay, a few years later, I decided I was going to start taking up Greek again. And this was when I was in the Marine Corps, right before I went to Afghanistan. And I thought, hey, I have a year that I'm not going to have a whole lot to do in my free time. And in the limited free time that I have, I ain't going to the movies. So I'll learn Greek. I'll learn Greek in that time. And while I was there, I took a slightly different approach. I thought, I don't really want to bring this big grammar book and be studying really intensely. I'm just going to learn vocabulary words while I'm there. And then by the time I come back to America, I'll have all of these words memorized so I can have a head start in learning Greek. So I got this book. You can see it's a lot smaller, right? And in the back, they have like the 1,000 most common words in Greek. And so I made myself a butt ton of flashcards, and I just set to memorizing these flashcards. And I started obviously with like the top 50 most common words in Greek, and then I continued learning the top 100 and the top 500. And these are words like am, be, go, in. I'm trying to find the actual word list here. It's at the very end, I guess. Like words like for, if, by. And so I memorized all of these words. It's not really interesting just to memorize words out of context, but I did it. And then after a while, you get to start to learn more interesting words. man, brother, horse, drink, right? And I was actually fairly diligent in my defense. I did a decent job staying disciplined to practice every day, and I learned a lot of vocabulary words while I was in Afghanistan. And that was good because learning lots of words is one of the most important things you can do in a language. If you have a lot of words and some limited grammar, you can at least find a way of stumbling around and saying what you want. But if you've memorized all the grammar in the language and you don't know many words, you really can't say a whole lot. So, you can say what you want about my method of just learning vocabulary. It wasn't the best method, but at least I had learned a lot of words. The problem is, I got back from Afghanistan, came back home to America, and I picked up this old book again. And I started going through the exercises again. And I was looking at, all of these charts in here. And there's lots of charts for noun declensions and rules. Memorize the rules and do the exercises. And look at all these charts that I had to memorize for nominative case, accusative case, and the genitive case. You have to learn how to do sentence diagrams. And again, it was not interesting. I gave up. I lost interest, didn't want to do it anymore. Because I wasn't getting any exposure to the actual language. I was memorizing rules the whole time. Rules for how to conjugate verbs, rules for how to change the ending of the nouns for the different noun declensions in different cases. I was learning rules about the subject and the object and the indirect object, the direct object, all that stuff. I was learning rules for prepositions. Use this preposition in this case and not in the other case. But I wasn't getting any exposure to the language. I wasn't memorizing sentences. I wasn't listening to music. I wasn't talking to people. I wasn't reading books. I wasn't doing anything. I was memorizing crap. And that's not to say grammar is not important. You want to learn grammar, and to a certain extent, reading this book would have been helpful to me if I had been doing other things. Now, many of you know, I'm learning Greek again. This time I'm learning modern Greek. And I'm using Duolingo, Link, and Pimsleur mostly. And I'm getting lots of exposure to the language, to how native speakers make sentences. Do I understand everything? No. Do I care? Not really. I'll get the grammar eventually, the more I'm exposed to it. And if something really doesn't make sense, then I'll go in the book and look up the rule. Okay? But at first, I'm getting exposure to the language, and that's the right way to do it. I was doing it backwards before, where I tried to learn all the words and all the grammar, and then I thought later on I'll expose myself. I'll read books in Greek. Right? I bought this Harry Potter translated into ancient Greek, and I was planning on reading that after I had memorized all the rules and memorized all the vocabulary words. It was backwards. This time I'm going about it forwards. I'm getting exposure, I'm seeing how the language works, and when something's confusing, then I look up the grammar. All right? So that's just my experience failing to learn Greek and why I will probably succeed at learning Greek this time. So thanks for watching the video. If you have any comments or questions, please feel free to ask me in the comment section below. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.